So part of me was thinking I should not cover this topic with a 10-foot pole, and then the other part of me said, what do you have to lose? I've seen a micro trend, micro used purposefully, where some women have stopped reading male authors, especially male fantasy authors. We are going to talk about this trend and just see some of the context of it a little bit, analyze it a bit, talk about why this is the case, and then look a little bit at the reverse. Are men reading women? Women who stopped reading men. Here's an Instagram example of a woman who avoids male authors and avoids recommending their books.
So if you are like me and you like high fantasy, but not written by a man, written by a woman, but not romantasy, fantasy books with romance as a subplot, but also with very unique magic systems, it's niche. I know it's very niche.
And here is an opinion piece. Fantasy written by women for me is more enjoyable. I find it's better written, better formulated, with better prose and better developed characters. This is her opinion, not mine. More importantly, most female authors are perfectly capable of writing male characters, but men seem to struggle with creating female characters. And the thing is, my time is limited. Reading is a massive time investment for me, and it's important that I find books I like quickly and easily. I don't have time to waste checking out 15 books from the library only to enjoy 5 of them. I do get that reading can be a time investment and you have to choose what you actually want to read. I don't really agree with the idea of keeping your scope so narrow that you don't really branch out and give anything a chance. But that's just me. So now every time I go into a bookstore or library, I eliminate candidates with extreme prejudice. If it's not a female author, I won't read it. And the context of this discussion would not be complete without the obligatory Reddit post. It says, do any females, we keep talking, it's okay to say female author or male author or something like that, but it's weird to just call everyone females, right? It's not just me. Do any other females out there have a sort of aversion or mental block to reading male fantasy authors? I know, there can be good male fantasy authors. There can be bad female fantasy authors. I get it. Honestly, it wasn't like this at first. The series that reignited my love for fantasy as an adult was the Everman Saga by James Maxwell. I devoured those books. But I have read some male-written fantasy over the past decade that just kind of turned me off to it as well. Thus, my hesitation. I literally will decide against purchasing a book sometimes if I see that a male wrote it. I don't want to be like this, but I feel like I have a mental block toward it or something. I do get where these women are coming from. I think a lot of people are sick of having the women in stories they read be secondary or seemingly unimportant characters that aren't developed. I do think there is some truth to some books dropping the ball when it comes to showing female characters accurately and as real humans with character development. I definitely don't think it's all of them. I think a lot of male authors have handled it very well, but when it happens enough, I can see certain women being a little bit upset with it happening time and time again. Also, most women, including me, do read men, so this is a small subsect of the population that we are examining at the moment. I definitely think it is a mistake not to read any books written by men, and I'll talk about that again in a minute. But first, women who use humor to make a point. While some women, like the ones I was highlighting a bit, seem to be explicitly ditching male literature, others take to social media to post funny videos about how poorly men sometimes write women. Here's one criticizing men for writing quirky and unrealistic women characters that are kind of just their dream girls.
She wore ripped jeans and vintage t-shirts because appearances didn't matter to her. She ate lots of food but never gained any weight. She collected hotel Bibles and would cut the pages out to create origami swans.
And here's another one poking fun at female fantasy characters.
I'm Dragonborn, and like Treasure, a woman is best when claimed.
I'm the damsel in distress, a TR and tantrum waiting to happen.
I'm a knight. Virtue is for women and the weak.
Here's a non-fantasy example highlighting the idea of a cool girl that could definitely apply to TV shows and movies as well.
You're gonna have to fix your steering wheel with a new carburetor. What? You never saw a girl that knows her way around cars? You don't have to dote on me, okay? I'm not one of those girls. I'm tired of the chads. I want a nice guy that'll take me to Taco Bell.
What the serious and silly posts have in common is a lot of women are demanding to be written well and be represented accurately in culture. You might also ask yourself, what about women writing men? And that's another topic. There's definitely some stuff that we could talk about with that, but that would just be a different video. That's not the topic of this one. I personally read men all the time, and I personally think also reading enough of these things online as I was researching for this video, there are plenty of books written by men that I enjoy that a lot of these women don't seem to enjoy, or I don't think they would enjoy them if they read them. And when it comes down to it, I feel like it's just based off what are you reading for? What's your purpose when you pick up the book? And sometimes there's multiple purposes you might have, and some are going to be better represented in some books than others. I don't think I'm cool because I will happily read male authors all the time. I just think that there's something different we're getting out of literature, and I think I've pinpointed what it is. Aspirational representation versus the human experience. I cannot and will not speak for all women. That being said, I feel like I can make an educated guess as to why a lot of these women don't enjoy some of the fantasy books written by men, especially when we're talking about epic fantasy and grimdark fantasy. Now, some books are just bad, but some books are good and women still don't like them. Some women, not women. I'm a woman. The women we're talking about. Maybe. I think a lot of these women, or younger women for sure, tend to read books because they want to have aspirational representation. They want an example of what they can be. They want to self-insert themselves into the story and have a story that gives them a sense of empowerment and what they can become and how powerful women can be. A girl power story. I love those stories and I read those stories. And when you think about grimdark fantasy or epic fantasy sometimes where women do not have those story arcs in some cases, it makes sense why some people don't want to read these books. I saw a lot of complaints online about, oh, in this fantasy book, a woman got raped again, or this happened, or this happened, or that happened, and so I'm just done with men. And I get if you're thinking of it as an aspirational representation of what you want women to be and what you want them experience in an ideal world, those books fall short for that quite a bit, and it makes sense why you've chosen to ditch them. I recently read the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and there are not a lot of women in this trilogy. It's a really good one, but there are not that many, and they are not that powerful. You might go at me for that. There's a couple significant women. I'm actually going to talk about them for a second. And one of the women in this story is a woman who is smart, and she is strong-spirited, and a lot of people really like her, and her brother's in the military. But she doesn't really have that much power, and she sort of gets taken advantage by a nobleman. And then there's another woman in this book that is a very powerful woman who is able to get a lot done, but she's permanently damaged because of a period of time in her life where she was enslaved, partially as a sexual slave, and she can never fully heal. So even when you have that powerful character, it comes with the dark side. And then in this story, there's also a woman who is experiencing an attempted rape by a man in power. All of these things are really dark. None of them are aspirational, and none of them are what we want in the real world. But the reason I like these stories, these grimdark, sort of gritty stories anyway, is because in real life, if we look at history, there has been tons of women who have been born and who have died, and nothing good happened by the time they died. They didn't get that arc where they overcame everything and everything was okay. They actually had these things happen to them. And I think sometimes when we only read stories where everything works out in the end and everything's happy, it makes me feel like we're glossing over human experiences to some extent. So I do like these books that show human experiences even when they're not pretty, as long as they're written well. Not to say that all of them are written well. There's plenty of these books where it's just gratuitous for no reason. And that's not good. I don't like that. But I don't think that we should shy away from anything ever bad happening to a woman in a fantasy book, or from books where women are not at the central part of the power structure of the book, because I still think there's something to be gained from seeing the human experience in a way that was sort of realistic to the one that we actually had in the real world. Maybe not 100%, but heavily inspired. With me defending this genre, I understand not all men have wonderful ability to write women, not all men have good intentions, and some men have really good intentions but get better the more they do it, and maybe at first they're not that great at depicting the opposite sex, just like women might not always be great either. And to be clear, even though I made the case, fantasy books do not have to be historically or culturally inspired to have merit. I kind of like the depiction of the human experience, and that's one of the reasons I read. But it's also completely valid to just want to read books where things work out and you overcome the obstacles and everyone that you want to win wins in the end. That's totally fine too. I personally think reading both is probably going to give you the most depth, but I'm not also going to police anyone in what they read. We're all reading and we're all having fun and we're all getting something out of literature no matter what we're reading. But I will stand by the fact that some of these stories that some women are criticizing for depicting bad scenes of women still have merit if they are written well and if they are written with good intentions. Also, some men write women phenomenally just the way that women want to be written. Men who center women. Women are not a monolith. Men are not a monolith either. There are plenty of male authors who have done the research to be able to really demonstrate a female character really well and do the character development and all those things that you need to do. And they have really worked on the empathy muscle to where they can actually think of what it would be like for their character enough to be able to portray the character in a way that feels authentic. There are men who have done that work. Even for the women who only want to read empowering stories about women, men have written them. It would be a disservice not to highlight the fact that some men have really accomplished what women are craving for their stories. Earlier this year, I read Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, and this blew me away. Grady Hendrix chose to write a story about teenage girls in the United States in the year 1970 who were sent to a boarding house to have their babies and put them up for adoption. In this book, even though it's a horror book about witchcraft, it also tackles issues like medical misogyny and purity culture in a way that felt very authentic. And there was several times where I sat here and thought, wait, a man wrote this? Because this feels really, really well thought out, and it feels like I can relate to this. I didn't have a kid, but I am a woman. So it might have been a horror novel, but it was also a well-researched historical fiction novel about an underrepresented part in US history, and it also kind of functioned in a way through how well written it was as a love letter to women. And in my mind, I would hate to imagine a woman picking up a book like this in a bookstore, getting intrigued by the concept, liking the idea, and then looking at the back cover and thinking, nope, I'm not going to read it. And I do know that most women wouldn't do that, for the record. Men not reading women is the bigger trend. Calling out this little minority of women who don't want to read male authors and not calling out men who don't want to read female authors would be a mistake. We do know there are some men out there who do not seem to like women very much, or at least if they do, not in a way that sees them as a full human, or maybe for other things. If you're a man watching this, don't feel uncomfortable. I'm probably not talking about you. It does always suck to be prowling around the internet and to fall into a misogyny pit. I was recently just watching BookTube, like literally videos about books, and I fell into one of them and got some comments about books, and men were saying things like this. I love it when women take over and everything immediately becomes dog shit as a result. And I just don't read books from female or gay authors. And those were real. This is not real. I'm going to show you a fake satirical Reddit post that kind of highlights what we're talking about here, but it's very over-exaggerated to some extent. Or maybe you might say it's not over-exaggerated at all, depending on what side of the internet you fall into. And it says, seriously though, I'm not sexist, I promise. I just can tell women are worse writers and also dumber than men. So reading books by them is a waste of time. But I want to do it, so please, can you tell me how? How do I suspend my disbelief that an actual female can write? P.S. If you recommend a woman writer, can you not tell me if it's actually a woman, because once I know it's written by a woman, I'll lose interest. So by starting my video saying that there's an increasing amount of women who are ditching reading books by men, don't misinterpret that as to me ignoring the fact that there are men who don't read books by women. In fact, if you look at the greater statistics, most women will read books written by men, and a lot of men won't read books written by women. The stats kind of seem to vary a little bit to the point where I don't want to say any numbers myself because I like to be confident in what I say, but all of them seem to show the trend that women are more likely to read a book written by a man than a man is by a woman, and they all kind of back that up to some extent. So I believe there's probably some truth to that. And let me be the first to admit, I probably read 60% women and 40% men. There's periods of the year where it probably goes to 70% women and 30% men. I don't think we need to do any sort of performative thing where we're making everything a 50-50 split, where that's kind of dumb and it's trying way too hard and it's sort of just not needed. But to be unwilling to read the other gender is also kind of weird. One man on Reddit said, most of the books I read are either by male writers, have male protagonists, or both. I have read some female authors before, like Shirley Jackson, Lois Lowry, J.K. Rowling, Mary Shelley, and Anne Rice, and I've really liked their books, but with most female authors and protagonists, I feel that I cannot relate to them as much as male authors. I believe in equality between males and females. Again, with the males and females. And I have nothing against females, but I generally like male authors more than female authors. And to him I say, you don't have to force yourself to be interested in something you're not interested in. I don't expect large amount of men to be rushing to the bookstore to get the newest romantasy released or historical romance drama. If you like it, that's totally fine too. There's no rules. But I don't expect people just to read things to check off a box by any means. But if you are avoiding reading books by women in genres that you read and like, and with concepts that you're interested in, that's weird too. Men are not default humans. Women do offer a lot to literature, and there's a lot that men can gain from reading books that they would want to read anyway that are written by women. Men who are awesome. And not to do the whole stereotypical not all men thing, but with this topic, it's not all men. There are some great creators out there who have done work to make sure that women in literature are highlighted and to show that they engage with female authors and not just with male authors. This first little clip is a man who made a video with tips to write better female characters, and don't we love that?
Now men, you should watch this so you don't get posterized on Reddit for writing women terribly. So we're gonna go over 8 common mistakes, and the very last 2 are probably the most important ones. Let's start with number 1. Making women incapable.
And we could also look at this man who made a list of his top 10 female fantasy authors.
So in this video, I'm gonna highlight 3 of my favorite female fantasy authors and tell you why you need to read their books. Like right now. Read them now. Let's get into it. Charles Swoops.
Or this one who seemed to have to defend himself for reading a 50-50 approximate split between male and female authors.
Said, do you only read books by women? Even though it was quite clear that it was pretty much 50-50. This issue comes up when men see that and men aren't in the majority of the media that is being consumed, then men assume that there is a prejudice there.
And to men who have read books written by women and who actively talk about them, you are awesome, and thank you so much for doing that. Your voices are important and they mean a lot. My final thoughts. Literature is extremely important and we need all voices. Individual preferences are allowed and no one can ever tell you what you should or shouldn't read, and you get to make those choices. I do think that there's more depth to what you read and what you get out of reading when you do have a little bit of variety in your life, but I mean, I can't control you, that's just my opinion. I personally want reading to be a thing that can bring us together, not put these little rifts that kind of take us apart a little bit, and it's kind of sad if it ever gets to the point that it does that, and I don't think it really does overall. I think overall, reading is something that brings us together. It makes us think about other experiences, we experience empathy, and we learn more about those around us. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I see you in another video.